Good morning or afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are coming from. Thank you for joining me today. I am going to give you an overview of the Leostream platform and specifically what is new in 9.1. Before I jump in, first let me introduce myself. My name is Karen Gondoli. I am the CEO here at Leostream and I head up the product team. I've been doing that since I started here almost 13 years ago now. So I know all about the product and how to use it. I'm really excited to show you what's new in this latest release. Just so you know, we are recording this session and the recording will be made available once we have it posted online for you. And then of course, I love it when these sessions are interactive, so please do ask questions. You should see a questions box in your window there, and if it's a question that's top of mind as we're going through the presentation, I'm happy to stop and answer it at the time. If it's something that can wait until the end, we'll have dedicated space for Q&A at the end of this presentation. So without further ado, here's what we're going to talk about. Now, I know some of you online are either familiar with Leostream in passing or are actually existing customers or partners of ours. So the beginning of this might be a little redundant for you, but you might also learn something new. We're going to start with a little introduction just to Leostream for those of you who are new to the company, and then also an introduction to the platform in case you are new to the platform itself. And then we'll actually dive into the nitty-gritty of what's new in 9.1 and show you some of it in action during the demonstration. So for those who are familiar with Leostream, feel free to hang with me here or go get yourself a cup of coffee. To start, who exactly is Leostream? Well, at the beginning of this year, we actually all sat down as a group and said, let's come up with what is our actual mission statement? What is it that Leostream is wanting to provide for our customers? And here is what you see. This is the official Leostream mission statement: to provide a vendor-neutral remote access and desktop connection management platform that equips IT teams across all industries with the only truly flexible and secure platform for building hosted desktop environments today that are future-proofed for tomorrow. And you notice I bolded certain words in here because really these are the core tenets about the solution that we want to provide for you. It is vendor neutral to the rest of a hosted desktop or VDI stack. Use whichever hosting platform you want, whichever display protocol you want, and mix and match them based on your needs. And it's flexible, not just in terms of the infrastructure you can support, but in the workflows that you can enforce for your users who are logging into it. And then all of that wraps together in this concept of being future-proofed. We know that IT teams need to be agile and be able to adopt new technologies as they come to market. And we want to make sure that the end user experience remains seamless as what's underneath the system changes. Because obviously end user experience is really key to a successful environment. So that's the mission statement. What do we actually do? What problems do we allow you to solve? Well, here we've just highlighted some of the kind of high level concepts that we're really good at allowing you to manage within Leostream. If we start at the bottom, hyper-converged infrastructures, we've seen a lot of uptick in different HCI platforms used as VDI platforms. HCI obviously simplifies some of the deployment for VDI, making it easier for you to deploy and scale out these environments. We do have support for Scale HC3, Scale Computing HC3. Verge IO is one that you'll see is new. And then obviously Nutanix, we're talking about that as a new addition to the Leostream 9.1 platform. Hybrid and multi-cloud, this points to the vendor neutrality that we have for the hosting platform. Whether you want to have your resources on-prem, whether you want them in a cloud, scattered around different clouds or different clouds and on-prem, you can manage all of those different environments from a single Leostream portal. So that applies not just to end users accessing the machines, but IT managing them as well. The whole idea is to give you a single pane of glass interface for managing and accessing hybrid and multi-cloud environments. And that cloud could include OpenStack. We were, as Leostream, probably the first vendor that actually started talking about OpenStack as a VDI platform. And we built that integration using the OpenStack APIs. So it's very well integrated with the platform and makes it easy for you to use that system to build VDI environments. And obviously OpenStack has its advantages because you can find open source versions of it, which allows you to remove some of the licensing fees that might be associated with other hypervisors or hosting platforms out there. Speaking of open source, Linux VDI, this really takes back Leostream to our original use case. Way back in the day when Leostream was founded in 2002, we were the only people that were able to do Linux VDI, and we had a lot of customers in financial services, semiconductor design, who needed to give users access to Linux machines in a VDI environment, and Leostream was the option there. And we continue to do that. You can manage Linux VDI alongside Mac OS, obviously not VDI, but access to remote Mac and Windows. Obviously, all those three operating systems work side by side in Leostream, just as well as all the different platforms do. Over the last couple of years, we've seen a large uptick in graphic intense workloads and access to those being managed through Leostream environments. And a lot of that is because of the vendor neutrality we have for the display protocol that's connecting you to the workload that your users need access to. We support many, if not most, of the high performance display protocols that are out there. You'll see HPZ Central Remote Boost in the demo. Scyld Cloud Workstation is new in 9.1, tiered eGPC over IP, nice DCV. If you happen to be running on AWS, that's a great option for you. Mectine TGX, no machine, the list goes on. Again, many different ways to connect users, and all from a single login. And not to forget on-premises hosted desktop, that's the kind of the bread and butter VDI. Yeah, we can do that too. So kind of thinking about what does Leostream provide in the context of a VDI or hosted desktop stack? Well, here you kind of see all the different pieces that you need to be thinking about. Obviously, you've got storage, the virtualization or physical host. Where is my machine running? What guest operating system is running on those virtual machines? You see the stack here, and where you see icons, those are the pieces of the stack that Leostream provides. And then what you do is you pick the best technology for the remainder of the stack based on what your users need to do, maybe what your corporate standards are for virtualization or cloud, and things like that. So kind of digging more into the specific pieces of the Leostream platform. At the top, the Leostream connection broker. It is really the brains of the operation. When you're looking at the demo, that's the interface that you're looking at. It's where you define your pools and your policies and all the different rules that indicate who has access to what, from where, how should they be connected, and how long does that resource belong to them before they're logged out and somebody else may have access to it. Running on the guest operating system then is the Leostream agent. It's a small component, but a very, very important and powerful one, because it's the Leostream agent that is letting the connection broker know who's logging in, when did they log in, have they gone idle, did they disconnect? And the connection broker logs all that information for you, so you really have good audit level tracking of what's going on across all of the systems in your environment. But then you also are able to automate automate actions, I should say, based on those events. So the connection broker and the agent really provide this pair, these two sides of the communication that bring all the power and the automation to your Leostream environment. Leostream Connect, that's our software client, and it installs on Windows, Linux, or Mac, just like the agent does. And it's actually kind of optional. You need some sort of client device, obviously, to log into Leostream, but there are many, many different ways that your users can do that. In the demo, you'll actually see I'm going to log in using just a web browser. And we've seen a lot more uptick in people wanting to use web browsers for logging into their Leostream environment, particularly because they want to do SAML-based authentication and use that SAML IDP to redirect people into Leostream. I'll kind of show you how that works in the demo. But if you do have users with laptops and you want them to install a software application as a client, that's where Leostream Connect comes into play. It's also great if you're repurposing older laptops. You can run Leostream Connect in what we call shell mode. So when the laptop boots, you just see the client and the user logs in, kind of turns it into a thin client, quote unquote, in a sense. And obviously you can use different types of thin clients to log into Leostream as well as any kind of PC over IP0 client. The final piece in that stack at the bottom is the Leostream gateway. It is optional if you're talking about on-prem users and on-prem resources, but if you happen to be in a remote environment or you want to put resources up in the cloud and tuck them away in a virtual private network, then the gateway is the key for your remote access. It provides the tunneling capability to take the user from their client device and connect them to the machine that's not otherwise network accessible. The gateway also does provide a nice HTML5 viewer, so even if you are entirely on-prem and you don't need the tunneling aspect of the gateway, you can use the Leostream gateway for in-browser connections using RDP, VNC, SSH. So again, no matter what operating system you're connecting to, as long as your user has a browser, they can use the gateway to get the connection. Just kind of quickly to show you how these pieces all fit together. I mentioned if you're on an on-premises network, the gateway is optional, so that's why you don't see it in this particular diagram here. But essentially you have the connection broker, which currently runs on CentOS 7 or RHEL 7. So that's great. You don't need to consume a Windows Server license to run the connection broker in your environment. And I will point out it runs in your environment. This is not a hosted solution. It's something that you install either in your cloud or on your premises, could be on hardware, could be on a virtual machine. And that means it actually works really well in dark sites too. So if you do have an environment that's completely off the internet, not a problem. You install the broker and you're off and running. And then you see that the broker communicates with the Leostream agents that are hosted on your desktops here. All that communication is always encrypted over 443 here. And then your users over on the left, again, they can be from Leostream Connect, any kind of client device they want. When you go from an on-premises network to a remote network, now you've got the gateway in the picture. So that's where you see the gateway in the picture here. And the gateway actually has two functions. Yes, it's obviously the key for connecting to desktops for remote users, but it's also the key for keeping your connection broker locked away either on-prem or in a private cloud, because the gateway forwards the login traffic as well. So essentially the gateway becomes the only externally facing IP address or system on the network, and everything else, your desktops and your connection broker, are tucked away off the internet for better security. I don't want to dig too much into architecture diagrams. If you do have questions about these or you want to get more information, we have plenty of documentation online, and we're always here if you have questions. Instead, let's get to the interesting stuff and talk about the highlights in the 9.1 version that was just recently released. Well, one of the big things that I haven't actually mentioned yet is this first version of the Leostream RESTful API. If you're an existing customer, you may have known that for years now. We had an XML-based API. Now there is a second API, which is a RESTful API. And the goal in this first version of the RESTful API, and also the connection broker CLI, which kind of goes along with it, was to make it easy for you to script and automate installing the connection broker or Leostream environments in general. One of the things that we've heard is that it's crucial for enterprise grade software to have a very robust API and to make it easy for you to automate, particularly if you're wrapping DevOps type processes into your environment. So the RESTful API in this version, it gives you ways to define users, to create pools and policies. And really, it's all about those parts of the form right now. Ultimately, we want the RESTful API to be able to automate the entire connection broker configuration. And when you see the demo, if you haven't seen the broker before, you'll realize that that will be a very large API. So what we did for this first version is focus on pools and policies, because what we saw was that customers wanted to be able to tweak policies automatically, maybe change the pool that's in there, maybe invoke provisioning based on an API. The CLI then, it's really right now the key for automating the deployments. It gives you ways to Well, there already was a CLI way to spin up a new connection broker, and now what you have is a way to attach the connection broker to a database. So if you think about in a DevOps environment, you've got your broker connected to an external database. If you want to refresh the machine that the broker's installed on, typically what you would do in these kind of environments is terminate the machine, spin up a new machine from your new master image, and then you would install the broker and you want to switch it to your old database because you want to maintain that connection broker configuration. The CLI now gives you a way to script that entire process. And we're actually working on the next iteration of the CLI is to handle the licensing as well. So through the CLI, you can reapply your license, add brokers to clusters, things like that. Again, so you can script these environments very easily. Those kind of things are hard to demonstrate, so I'm not going to be actually going through API calls or CLI calls during this demo. If you do want more information on that, you want to check out the documentation for the RESTful API, just drop us a note. It's easy for us to share with you. Things that you will see in the demo. Usability enhancements, this primarily goes to the policy form. If you were an existing enterprise customer and you were managing connections to a large number of pools, you might have noticed that your policy form could get a little large and wieldy and be slow to load. So we did a lot of work, and I think, and all of our usability testers, we did a lot of work redesigning that form, and you'll see what that looks like now and how you use it in 9.1 Broker. The other thing that you'll notice right when you log in is that there is a new Leostream dashboard. In this version, it's focusing on providing information about pool statistics. So the number of machines in a pool that are running versus stopped, the number of machines in a pool that are assigned versus unavailable. The whole idea is to give you a snapshot of the usage information for the pools in your connection broker. Going forward, we want to add additional widgets to that dashboard based on the information that's important for our customers to see. So we're always looking for feedback on what's the snapshot of information that you need, whether that be to monitor the health of your environment or to make a business case for when you need to add machines to pools. So again, always feel free to reach out to us and provide us with feedback on that dashboard. The last two items here are just continuing to expand out the different platforms and display protocols that we support. This is, like I said, future-proof. We'll always be adding new things as the technologies come to market. Obviously, Nutanix has been around for a while. This is not new in general, but it's new to us. We actually added in the API support to Nutanix AHV. We are now part of the Nutanix Ready ecosystem. That's very exciting for us. So you'll see that in the demo. And then the last one, Scyld Cloud Workstation. This is a high performance display protocol from Penguin Computing. And the nice thing about Scyld Cloud Workstation is it has support for the connecting to Linux, connecting to Windows, connecting to macOS. So whichever platform you want to connect your users to, you can connect it using their platform. And it also includes both a client-based connection and an HTML5 connection. So that's really great for now a high performance in browser connection. Leostream Gateway I mentioned is RDP and VNC, maybe not that performant, but now with the Scyld you get the high performance in the browser as well. Those are the big things. A few smaller bits that are in the 9.1 release. We did enhance the Java version of our Leostream agent, so now it can monitor the PC over IP connections to macOS. Terry released the PC over IP agent for macOS a bit ago, and now we have the support for that as well. Provisioning volumes in OpenStack. This is a small enhancement to our OpenStack centers so that when you spin up a new machine, it used to be that all the storage was ephemeral. Now you can actually provision that a separate volume for the OpenStack instance as well. Storing user assignments for advanced reporting. I think this might relate to a question I just saw pop up. Maybe not. We'll get back to that in a second. So store user assignments for advanced reporting. The whole idea here is there was always a way in the pool history. Well, there was always a setting in pools to store the history. Now we leverage that for the dashboard. That's how you'll see the information on the dashboard. But now there's a new setting on the user assignments report specifically to sample the data and store it in the database. It used to be you got snapshots of this data, but now you can actually store it in the database and pull it out so you can actually create these reports offline. The fourth item here, reconnecting TGX sessions through the gateway. If you are a Mecdyne TGX user, the most recent version of TGX, I believe it's 2.2, has functionality to reconnect. So if you happen to have some sort of network drop, you bump the cable on your laptop, plug it back in, that could cause your TGX session to drop. But now when you plug your cable back in, the receiver and the sender on the TGX side will reconnect automatically. That was great, except if you were going through the gateway, because when your network connection dropped, the Leostream gateway would close the port. Now what we have is a setting in the broker that you can use, not just for TGX, but any other protocol that actually supports this as well. If it does have an automatic reconnect on network drop, there is a setting that you control for how long the gateway should wait before it closes its port. So this allows you to get users reconnected for these little quick network glitches, but make sure you're not holding the ports open too long because that becomes a security concern. And speaking on the gateway, this last one, I know it's like define locations based on the exported for header. Okay, that essentially gives you a way for creating locations based on the gateway that a user is connecting in from. So if you need to change what policy the user is assigned to, what protocol plan they use, because the protocol plan is going to determine the gateway that connects them, you can now do this by creating these locations based on the exported for header. So that's kind of an advanced move feature. Okay, so I think, let me look at the couple questions we have here. Reporting pool usage over time. Yeah, so I'll show you in the demo some of the way that you can report pool usage over time right now. And that kind of takes me to the demo, so let's do it. Let me share my screen. Here we go. Okay, so let's hide that guy. So this shouldn't look any different to those of you who are Leostream customers. This is the administrator web interface for the Leostream connection broker. End users would use this exact same interface. And in fact, to prove that, let's start with an end user view. So here now I'm logging in, that's my username there. I'm going to log in with my credentials so you can see what I would be offered as an end user. So in my case, because I wanted to show you how you can have one single interface and connect to different types of resources using different types of protocols, I have a policy which allows me to connect to a Linux machine using Remote Boost, a Windows machine using Scyld Cloud Workstation, and a Mac OS using PC over IP. So here you'll see some of the newer functionality in Leostream. Obviously, Remote Boost support we've had for quite some time. Here it's going to connect in, and what it's doing is launching the Remote Boost receiver in the background. And now I'm going to log in here. And as that's going on, what I can do, oops, there's my cursor. That's logging in the background. And now what I'll do is I'll log in here as the admin. You see the pool new dashboard. We'll come back to that in a second. But first, let's just look at the logs. Set a marker so we can watch what's going on. And you can see that I logged in and I launched my Remote Boost connection. And you can see the Leostream agent notifications coming in there for that Linux machine that I connected to. Well, let's say I've now decided I also need to connect using Scyld Cloud Workstation. Just to show you how this works with the HTML5, here I set up my policy so it actually launches the connection in a new tab. That's great. That way my users can get back to their offer list, which is still sitting in this tab here. And so now I launch and I get connected in the browser. We did in this version in 9.1 also add the ability to launch the Scyld Cloud Workstation software client from a web browser login. It would have looked just like that Remote Boost connection where it downloads a file and that launches off the, oh, actually in case of Scyld Cloud Workstation, it launches based on a URI. So it works like the PC over IP connection that you're about to see here in a second. On that note, I'll come over here and I'll go ahead and I'll connect to this Mac OS using PC over IP. Because this is using a URI to launch the client, I get this little, hey, do you want to open this client? That's what would happen with Scyld as well. Let's go ahead and open that. I someday will put certificates on everything. Now in this case, I'm going to do something neat. You'll notice I logged into Leostream with my credentials, but here on this particular Mac, it's shared by a number of users and the applications on it need me to always log in as this Leostream user. So I'm logging into the Mac using the Leostream user, and Leostream has been told, hey, anytime you get a login notification for that Leostream user, please associate it with the credentials that were used to actually log into Leostream. And that was a lot of Leostreams in one sentence. But so that's going on in the background there. And again, in the logs, you see absolutely everything that's going on, no matter what platform the user is connecting to, what client they're using, and what operating system they're logging into. So that kind of gives you the end user experience. Now let's look through the connection broker here so you can see how we made that all happen. Going back to the dashboard, so here is the new dashboard. This is for my demo system, so there's not a lot of activity going on, so all my pools tend to be flat, but you can get an idea of the different types of information that you can store for pool history and for the desktop's assignments. Now the pool history, it's set over time. So the key to get data on the pool history is to always make sure that you turn it on for your pools. So for any pool that you want to collect history for, you come in here and you select the track historical and pool assignments and connections and set a sample rate. That information then is stored in the database, and that's what's used for doing the pool statistics that you see on the page here. The desktop's assignments and the desktop's power status, then they're kind of snapshots, what's going on exactly right now. It's not over time, it's what's happening now. And it's essentially the information that you get if you look over here on the pools page. So I have available, unavailable, assigned, all these different states for my desktops. And you can get a snapshot of those in graphical form on the desktop as well. On the dashboard, I should say, as well. And then the other kind of snapshots you get, which are really good for looking at what's going on in the environment right now as far as volumes. You can see the number of users logged into machines, number of users connected, and obviously the number of licenses that you have in use based on if you're a user or a desktop license there. So a lot of good stuff on the dashboard. And of course, if there's any information that you're hoping to see here and you don't, do let us know. So now let's look into the setups area, and I'm going to step through a lot of the pages. Not all of it's new in 9.1, but for the people who aren't familiar with Leostream, I wanted you to see the breadth of what you can do in here. So let's start at setup and just kind of start working our way down. So here in the authentication server section, here's where you're going to tell Leostream what are the different types of authentication that you want to use. Particularly on this page, whether you want to use Leostream to do username password authentication, or if you want to front end your Leostream environment by an identity provider that supports SAML. So for example, you notice here I have Google. I could actually have logged in here using my Gmail account. I have Google set up as a front end SAML based IDP. So in that case, your SAML IDP handles all the authentication. If you want to do MFA, you do it in there. And then through a SAML assertion, it redirects the user into Leostream, and then Leostream handles policy assignment based on the data that comes back in that SAML assertion. You don't have to use a SAML-based IDP. You can use Leostream for username password authentication. That can be using Active Directory, could be using Open LDAP. If you're an old school Linux shop, we do still support NIS. We still have people using that. If you are using Leostream for username password authentication, you can still do MFA. That's done through the MFA providers here. And there's essentially two ways to do this, either through our native integration with Duo or using our Radius support. So any IDP, here I happen to always use Okta. You can also use Duo supports Radius as well. Any identity provider that can support the Radius protocol, you can use that for the second factor. both for sending push notifications as well as entering in the one-time tokens. So after you connect to authentication servers in MFA, now you come into centers, and here's where you tell Leostream what are the different hosting platforms that you support. And as I mentioned, we support a lot of them across different clouds and on-prem environments. So here for my demo environment, you see I'm kind of connected to a little bit of everything. Yours probably won't have this much, but you can if you want. All the major cloud providers, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, I mentioned OpenStack. Here we see our new Nutanix Center. So essentially to connect to Nutanix, we need the IP address or host name both to the Prism element and the Prism Central service that you're using, because we do use APIs both in Element and in Central based on the functionality that we're providing in Leostream. And our support for Nutanix is on par with any of the other cloud or virtualization hosts that we support via a center. So that means not only do we inventory your machines so you can assign them out to users, but we have power control over them, reboot, start, stop, all of that. And we have a full provisioning, all the pools, all the provisioning capabilities that's in our pools, you can use in your Nutanix environment. Something else you see in here, here's the Verge IO Center. This is another new hyperconverged infrastructure platform that we integrated with. So if you want to use that, they're actually, I like Verge IO because they're based in Michigan like I am. And then obviously on-prem virtualization, vSphere, Red Hat are the two that we have API integration with. But essentially any platform that you're using, if you put a Leostream agent on the machine, it registers in the uncategorized desktop center, and then you can manage connections to that machine and limited power control, shut down and reboot using the Leostream agent. So even if you don't see a center, we can manage the connections to that machine. The last thing I'll show you on the setup section is just the gateways page. This is where you enter the different Leostream gateways that are part of your environment. And one of the powers of Leostream is the way it's architected to work with the gateway, because essentially, as I mentioned, the gateway can be used to forward login traffic to the connection broker. But then when it comes to the gateway used for the desktop connection, it doesn't have to be the gateway that forwarded the login traffic. It can be whatever gateway you need it to be to connect the users to the resource based on where you've hosted it. So I might have an on-prem broker, so a gateway that forwards the user to the broker, but then that user is ultimately connecting to a desktop at AWS, so I want to switch them over to a gateway that works with the AWS network. And you can have as many different gateways here as you want. They can be load balanced based on load. So lots of ways you can architect this solution. We're always here to help, because obviously, depending on the size of the environment, it can get pretty complex. So in the configuration section here, here's where you're going to define all of the different workflows that you want to support. And this is where it's the rules defined in here that made it so Leostream knew what 3 machines was I supposed to be shown when I logged in. So it all starts with pools. Pooling in Leostream is a very powerful concept, and it controls not only what users have access to, but it also controls provisioning within Leostream. And that's very important if you're looking at cloud environments. Like I mentioned, we have it for Nutanix as well. So if I look just as an example here, here is my machine of all my on-premises machines. And it happens to be, in my case, set up based on my initials and everything Windows, my on-premise Windows machines. But if I look here, I have a pool of everything in AWS, so I've done it based on Center. Your pool definitions determine what's in the pool, and it's dynamic, so as you add machines, we'll automatically sort them into the appropriate pools. And then down here, you have all of the provisioning. So if I enable provisioning, provision in a different center. Actually, if I just open that list again, you see all the different centers that we can provision in. So if you want Leostream to manage capacity in your clouds or your hyperconverged infrastructures or your virtualization platforms, you can do that all by just setting up different pools within Leostream here. So in my case, for this particular demo, what I had was I had one pool which were machines running macOS that I was going to connect to using PC over IP. I had a pool, which were my Linux machines that I was going to connect to using Remote Boost. And I had my pool of Windows machines that I was going to connect to based on using Scyld Cloud Workstation. So the pools they were logical groupings. To actually determine which protocol was going to be used, that was done here in protocol plans. So again, create as many protocol plans as you need based on the different types of connections you want to establish. So as an example, since this is new, here I created a protocol plan for Scyld Cloud Workstation. Now you'll notice this form is broken into sections. So here I have Leostream Connect. I've selected one as the top priority for Leostream Connect logins. And in this case, it launches the Scyld Cloud Workstation client from a command line using the parameters you pass in. And you can pass the connection through a Leostream gateway or not. So if on-prem, you can go straight to the Scyld Cloud Workstation. Off-prem users can go through a gateway. For web browsers, as I mentioned, you do have an option. You can either connect them by using a URI to launch the software client, or what you saw in my demo was you can actually just launch it in an HTML5 viewer. And again, that also can go through a gateway or not, depending on what you happen to need. If I look at the PC over IP here, in that case, because it was a web browser login, I selected the priority 1 for the Teradici PC over IP soft client. And then here, I entered the IP address of the PC over IP connection manager and security gateway. For remote users, if you want to wrap their connections into Leostream as well, it's not the Leostream gateway those connections go through, it is the Teradici security gateway. So that's where you enter in the IP address of that, and then just some other default values for what we're going to use when we launch the PC over IP client using the URI as well. And just for completeness, I'll show you the Remote Boost protocol here. Again, I select one for HPZ Central Remote Boost, both in the connection browser or in the web browser section and in the Leostream Connect section. And in this case, it downloads a RG receiver file that's used to launch the software client. So just really briefly, I want to show you release plans just because it's where you see the power of the Leostream agent come into play. If I look at some of these plans, you'll notice that they're broken into sections. Did the user disconnect? Have they logged out? Did they go idle? Those are the events I mentioned come from the Leostream agent. And so using power control plans, you can automate power state. Perhaps you want to log the user, or sorry, you want to power the machine down when the user logs out. In release plans, you're indicating how long does the user own that machine after they get assigned to it. When the user logs out, perhaps in this case, I'm saying I'm going to wait 30 minutes after the user logs out. And then after that, I'm going to release the machine to the pool, which then triggers the when desktop is released section of the plan, which is where you can say, well, maybe I actually want to go ahead and terminate that machine when they're done. This is great in cloud environments. You want to model in a non-persistent workflow. All of this comes together in policies, and here's where you're going to see the new policy form. So let me look at my demo policy. First thing you'll notice if you're an existing Leostream user is now this is a set of tabs across the top. So the general page has kind of some of the high level settings. For example, this was the setting I ticked to make that Scyld Cloud Workstation connection launch in another tab. And then the pool assignments now replaces the really long part of the form that used to just scroll down the page if you had multiple pools. Here I can add more pool assignments, or I can just come in here and edit my existing. Let me look at my Windows Scyld pool. So here I indicate how many machines I'm getting from the pool. What I did, because it's a nice way to display information to users, was I actually displayed the desktop in the client using the pool name instead of the individual desktop name. My desktops don't have particularly user-friendly names, so that's a nice way of changing that. In my case, I also enabled single sign-on so that our Leostream agent can handle sign-on to the console. Some protocols, for example, PC over IP, have their own built-in credential provider, so they'll handle the single sign-on. For protocols that don't, you can use the Leostream agent to do that. And then obviously here I set the protocol plan. So in my policy, I essentially added 3 different pool sections, each one to offer one machine from the particular pool. and associate the desired protocol plans and power control and release plans based on how I wanted to manage that user session. And then it all came together down in the assignments tab here, where I assigned myself the demo policy. And in this case, I didn't demo any MFAs, but we have lots of videos online where you can see kind of the MFA in action if you want to see that. I am, however, seeing lots of questions pop up. So I'm going to stop the demo part and switch back to the slides. Give it a second. There we go. Before I launch into questions, I just, of course, got to tell you what's coming up next. So that was the current 9.1 release of Leostream. And in 2022, Leostream is going new. We're changing the version number from 9 to Leostream 2022. And here's some of the things that we've got coming down the pike for you. A lot of advancements in our support for AWS. It was the first cloud that we had support for, so it's got pretty advanced functionality right now, but based on the usage we've seen over the last year and a half, we've gotten some really good feature requests. So you're going to see a lot of those coming into play next year. As I mentioned, additional dashboard elements. So let us know what you want to see there. We've heard some thoughts already, but we definitely want people in the field to tell us what's the most important for them to see. We've got the framework now. Now we just need to fill it out. Another big thing is a lot more scheduling for assignments, power control, and provisioning. Right now, you saw how I could assign machines to users, but we really want to give you fine-grained control over, it's October 31st, and this particular user is working on a particular project that they need to have access to a particular machine. This is great for classroom applications. A lot of media and entertainment use cases need this advanced scheduling. So you'll see a lot of that coming down for next year as well. One thing I didn't show that we have is support for collaboration for a number of protocols right now. We're adding that PC over IP and DCV into that framework. This allows you to have multiple users sharing the same session so that they can work together while scattered across the country. And essentially in Leostream, what you have is the ability to send the invitations and manage these collaboration requests from within Leostream. This is great for your end users. It makes it easy for them to invite someone to collaborate with them. But it's great for IT and administrators as well, because now they can see, they have a running list of, okay, who's been asking to collaborate, and did somebody connect to that section, or did it time out? So you'll see that in there. And of course, more RESTful APIs. There will always be more RESTful APIs. The focus next year on the last few pieces for the installation, and then also looking at RESTful APIs specific for managing the desktops themselves. So we have a lot of requests for people wanting to change desktop states from available to unavailable so they can do maintenance on the machine or edit certain desktop parameters. So you'll see a lot of that coming out next year as well. Okay, so there are so many questions. I'm going to start taking some of these in these last few minutes that I have here. I'm just going to start at the top. So we have a question, can you prevent admin access via the Leostream gateway? And yes, that is some functionality. I don't remember if that was new in 9.1 or if it came out in a 9.0 update, to be honest. But there are ways now one way is using that X-forwarded for that I mentioned. You can actually define that as a location and then change the person's role. If they're a person who has admin, you can change their role so they don't have access to the admin interface anymore through that login. But there actually also is a way, and maybe I should share my screen for this so I can show you in the broker. Let's go back to sharing the screen. There are new system settings in here. Hide that again. In the security section for blocking web browser login when accessing the broker via the gateway. So now the login page entirely, not just the admin access, but in a lot of cases you don't, particularly if the broker login page is on the internet because the gateway is forwarding login, you don't want the login page to be accessible at all. That's particularly good if you're using a SAML-based IDP. So users log into Okta, and Okta redirects them into Leostream. So there's no reason to have that login page on the internet at all. And so you can check that box, and now Essentially, if the gateway comes to the broker just displays a 404. It's like, nope, sorry, no login page for you. Oh, somebody likes the policy format. Thank you very much for saying that. I'm glad you like it. So let's see, what else do we have? Is there a client for Chromebooks and thin clients? What we see, particularly on Chromebooks, what we see there is the HTML5 options. So you've got Google Chrome on the Chromebook, so you can log in using the web browser, and then you could launch the Scyld connection, for example, right in the browser. If Chrome does have an app that can be launched from clicking a link, then you can leverage that display protocol. Really, for the Chromebook, the login to Leostream is through the web browser, and then it's a matter of which display protocols can I support on that Chromebook as well. And that's true for a lot of thin clients as well. If it is a thin client that's running a Linux variant or a Windows embedded, you can install our Leostream Connect client on there to use as the front end portal. But again, if there's a web browser, you can just use that, and then it becomes a matter of which display protocols can I use based on that client type as well. And then there's kind of a related question about, these are all scrolling off of me too fast. There's a related question here about using a Teradici zero client access Leostream, and you most definitely can do that. Any Teradici client, whether it be a PC or IP soft client, zero client, mobile client, you can log into Leostream as well. Now, the trick there, obviously, is if you're in an environment that's entirely using only the PC over IP protocol, then this works out great. If you're in an environment that wants to use PC over IP and another protocol at the same time, well, the only thing the user can launch from this client device is a PC over IP connection. So in that case, you're back to maybe you use a web browser, because then they can launch PC over IP or they can launch something else. Okay. Oh, here's a fun one. Let's answer the how did how did the company get its name? There actually is a blog somewhere on our website for this, but essentially, back in the day, the very first computing device in the UK, if I remember correctly, it was for making change at a tea shop. And the name of that computing device was Leo. So that's how the Leo part of the name came into be. The stream part I often feel like is kind of lost in urban myth and legend, because I've heard that the tea shop was located on a stream. I've heard that it just sounded good with the word Leo. I've heard a number of different reasons for that, but Leo is definitely the name of the first computing device that was for that change making computer in the tea shop. Oh, here's a question. Good one. What's the plan for after CentOS? I mentioned that the connection broker, and this is true for the Leostream gateway as well, they currently install on CentOS or Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7. Now, obviously for CentOS, a lot of people like that because it's open source, but you have heard that they will no longer be supporting CentOS 8. So what we are planning to do in 2022 as part of that new version for next year is migrate to Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8, because we do have a number of customers who prefer Red Hat as a supported version of Linux, and then also looking at Rocky Linux for an open source version. If you do have other thoughts on preferred Linux distributions, we are all ears, but currently those are our two ideas. We're doing some investigation looking at Amazon Linux as well. But is it possible to customize the end user interface? Yes, it is. And I often mention that and show that in the demo, but I didn't this time. So let me open this up here and drag this here. So this is a different broker that I have. And here, this has been customized, not by me, I don't have this much talent, but by our graphic designer, Maureen. She did a great job here. And it just gives you one example of the different ways that you can customize the Leostream interface. And this is all done by basically modifying some of the CSS files and HTML files. We do have some documentation online on how you can do this. And I even think if I log into this one, My MFA still on? Nope, it logged me right in. I was hoping that you'd see the MFA dialog being branded too. Oh, oh, we've got votes for Ubuntu and for SUSE Linux as distribution. Noted. Thank you very much. All right, let's see. What else do I have in here? Templates. Ran into issues. Any of the templates required people to be kicked out of their session. I'll have to digest. There's a question here related to templates and how to use them for updating machines. I'll have to digest this one a little bit longer and get back to you on that one. It's not a simple answer. And I think that actually brings us to the end of the questions. Anyone have anything else? Oh, there was one other question that just popped up. Somebody noticed, and I was in the setup section here, somebody noticed that there is a tenants field here, of which I have none defined here. But essentially what this is the very beginning of full multi-tenancy support within Leostream. What you can do right now is define tenants here, and then tenants have unique URLs that they would hit. So if you have company1.mybroker.com versus company2.mybroker.com, you can have those defined as different tenants in the broker. And where it's particularly useful right now in Leostream is if you have different groups of users who should be coming through different SAML-based IDPs. So you have different parts of your organization have standardized on different identity providers. You can use different tenants to use that within Leostream, because otherwise you get one SAML provider per entire broker, or you can have different SAML providers per tenants. Then we're also going to kind of latch on to that through the tenants, the ability to uniquely customize the connection broker interface. So I showed you that customized interface. Right now it's one per Leostream installation or cluster, but we want to wrap that into tenants as well. So now you take company1 to company1.mybroker.com, and it's going to look like company1's brand, whereas company2 gets their own brand. So that's some very exciting stuff coming up in the future as well. Okay, and so now with that, I thank all of you who have joined me here and for the feedback that you're providing. That is all very appreciated. If you do want to try this yourself, we do offer a free trial. If you want to just talk to us, learn a little bit more, learn about the RESTful API, then you can always contact us at sales@leostream.com. And with that, I do have one last question. Any way to access the internal database to enable external reporting? The internal database, probably what you'll want to do there is switch it to an external database, and that way you can actually just grab everything out of an external SQL or Postgres. The internal database is running Postgres. Questions with that much technical, that require that much technical expertise are great things to ask our support team. You can always contact them at support@leostream.com. And with that, I will wrap this up. Thank you all again for joining, and I look forward to talking to you in the future.